Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello there, I'm Paul Barber. Our top stories this hour on CGTN. China and the United States call for a smooth transition in relations as Presidents Xi and Biden hold a final meeting on the sidelines of APEC in Peru. Hopes for a breakthrough on climate talks at the upcoming G20 summit in Brazil as discussions stall at COP29. And Israel ramps up its attacks on Lebanon. Officials say more than 145 strikes have hit the country over the past day. Chinese President Xi Jinping and his US counterpart Joe Biden say they are ready to ensure a smooth transition of relations. In what was their final meeting before the new Trump administration takes over, the leaders of the world's two largest economies held talks on the sidelines of APEC as the annual gathering wrapped up in Peru. Our correspondent Zhao Yunfei reports.
An effort to tackle global challenges. Chinese President Xi Jinping calls on Washington to abandon major country competition as he meets with U.S. counterpart Joe Biden. President Xi says decoupling and supply chain disruption are not the solution in an era with flourishing sci-tech revolution and industrial transformation.
China-US relations can make substantial progress if the two countries seek common ground and mutual benefits while reserving differences as partners and friends. Their relations could suffer setbacks or aggression if they treat each other as opponents and enemies, with vicious competition that will harm each other.
President Xi elaborated on China's position on the Taiwan question, the South China Sea issue, and the Ukraine crisis. President Biden says the United States does not seek a new Cold War, does not seek to change China's system, and does not seek conflict with China. He added the U.S. does not support the so-called Taiwan independence and would not use Taiwan to compete with China. The two leaders spoke positively about the two countries' cooperation in diplomacy, economy, military, drug control, and climate protection.
China and the U.S. should inject more certainty and positive energy into the world for interests of the whole of humanity. Taking note of the recent U.S. election, President Xi says China's goal of a stable, healthy, and sustainable China-U.S. relationship remains unchanged. He says the relationship between the two countries has kept stable on the whole over the past 4 years, adding that both sides should work to strive for a steady transition of their ties. A key message President Xi emphasizes with his U.S. counterpart is that a stable major country relationship can benefit the people from both sides and the rest of the world, and that China is ready to work with the U.S. to maintain dialogue, expand cooperation, and manage differences. Zhao Yunfei, CGTN, Lima.
Build an Asia-Pacific community with a shared future and start a new era in development. That was the message from President Xi as he delivered a speech at the APEC Economic Leaders Meeting. The meeting in Lima brought together business and political leaders from 21 Asia-Pacific economies under the theme Empower, Include and Grow. Strategic development, digital economy and green development were among the main talking points. And President Xi will now travel to Brazil for the G20 Leaders Summit and a state visit. The two-day meeting, which starts on Monday, connects the world's major economies. And there are hopes for a breakthrough in climate talks after discussions at the COP29 meeting in Baku hit an impasse. Our correspondent Dan Williams reports from Rio de Janeiro.
There's going to be three key themes at this G20, the Group of 20, which makes up some 85% of the global economy, which obviously brings together 19 countries as well as the European Union and African Union as well. Those three themes at this one going under the title Building a Just World. The three themes: social inclusion, reform of international institutions, and the point that you made there, energy transitions as well. Let me break that down a little more for you. The opening ceremony of the summit on Monday morning, that will see the launch of the first ever Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty. This is a Brazilian initiative aimed at mobilizing countries and other institutions to really put more focus towards hunger and poverty, given that there was a UN report last year that suggested that somewhere between 713 and 737 million people were undernourished in 2023. Now, in the afternoon, the discussion will then switch to global governance reform. So that will look at the various international institutions, reforming those institutions, the likes of the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank and the World Trade Organization as well. And then on Tuesday morning, the debate will then switch over to energy transitions. Of course, we know about the climate crisis, what more can be done in order to have more green solutions towards solving this climate crisis as well. And then finally, on Tuesday, there will then be the official handover to South Africa, who will assume the presidency of the G20 in 2025.
And a signed article, Dan, by China's President Xi Jinping has been published in a Brazilian newspaper there. What did it say?
Yeah, this is a signed article, as you say, that goes under the title of Friendship Spanning Vast Oceans, a Voyage Towards a Brighter Shared Future. Now, in it, President Xi Jinping lay out the benefits that have come from the two countries, Brazil and China, their cooperation over the years, saying that it's established a model for developing countries to develop a win-win cooperation, he says, and pursue a shared history. He says he hopes that, that now they can usher in a new golden 50 years. That's, of course, making reference to the fact that this year celebrates the 50th anniversary of full diplomatic ties between the two countries as well. And it also, this article pointed out the vast trade that exists between these two countries. China remains Brazil's largest trading partner. But it also talks about other elements as well, such as how pointing out the two countries' rich culture, talking about how music and culture can also bring the two countries a much better understanding. And he also talks about the importance of people-to-people exchanges as well. That's a theme that we've seen develop over a number of these kind of bilateral talks that are taking place. And of course, at the end of the week, we will see the two countries, Brazil and China, sit down for talks in Brasilia for those bilateral talks as well. So there's a lot going on here in Brazil over the course of the week between the G20 and, as I say, those bilateral talks later in Brasilia.
That was Dan Williams reporting for us from Rio. Let's get more on this now with Yan Liang, who is Chair Professor of Economics at Willamette University in Portland, Oregon. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor. So I'm going to ask you a little bit about the G20 summit that's coming up in Brazil soon. But first, can we just have a look back to the APEC gathering that's just wrapped up in Peru? What were your key takeaways from this year's event?
Yeah, good to talk to you, Paul. So in terms of the takeaways, I have major three takeaways. One is that when you look at the leaders' declaration, what you see is a reiteration of the consensus of, multilateral cooperation and open regionalism. So I think the leaders are really reaching the agreement that they wanted to promote trade and investment, digital transformation of the economy, formalization of the economy, and also just to build more synergies between countries when it comes to cooperation in, for example, sustainable development and so on and so forth. So I think that's a very loud and strong message to the rest of the world that the Asian Pacific economies are going to work together toward these common goals. The second takeaway, of course, is the mega port jointly built by Peru and China, the Chancay port in Peru, that is labeled as, the gateway to Asia that promises to transform trade and economic development. So I think that is a substantive step towards regional integration. And finally, I think a lot of meetings on the sideline, your reporters talk about the meeting between Xi and Biden. I think this is fruitful dialogues and discussions that would help to really clarify each other's stance going forward, which is very important in this coming, more unpredictable global environment.
Indeed, thank you. Well, that's a great summary for us. As we look ahead now to the G20 summit, what economic policies do you see taking precedence on the agenda, considering considering where we are at with the new incoming administration in Washington, how do you see China's role evolving within the bloc?
Right, that's a great question. I think it's clear, as your reporter pointed out, the three major themes at this G20 are global alliance against hunger and poverty, and also climate change, especially global alliance of mobilization for against climate change. And last, there's also a lot of discussions that are about reform of the global governance system. And I think China will play a very important role in all three different areas, right? China lifted 800 million people out of poverty in the past 4 decades. There's a lot on China's part to share with the rest of the world in terms of poverty eradication. And second, when it comes to climate change, China has invested $890 billion in its own green economy at home, and another $100 billion in international clean energy investment projects since 2023. And China has installed more renewable energies in the world than the rest of the world combined just last year. And so China has the finance and the technology to help to promote that sustainable development going forward. And last, I think China also really resonates with this idea of reform of the global governance structure. China accounts for 18% of the world GDP, but only has 6% of the IMF voting share. And so I think it makes a lot of sense for the G20 to discuss all these very important issues, because that really is the way that countries can move forward during this poly crisis.
Well, really great to get your insights into these really important meetings. That's Yan Liang, Chair Professor of Economics at Willamette University. Thanks so much.
Thank
you. You're watching CGTN. Still ahead. From goosebumps to goose racing, Hungary celebrates food, drink and tradition in one of the country's most popular festivals.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
I think it should be more global cooperation.
I would like to hear more the voice of the developing countries.
Globalization has lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
The green transition has to happen. It's a necessity.
For China and the United States are important powers in the world.
What unites us is much more than what divides us.
And I believe China is committed to this agenda.
Join me, Juliet Mann, to set the agenda at these times every weekend on CGTN.
This week on Razor, creating the power of the sun here on Earth.
We will have endless energy. Could replace the oil. It will for sure change our life, change the world a lot. We are working on this project. It's like when humans learn how to use fire. This is the second fire of the human in our history.
And welcome back. These are the headlines. China and the United States call for a smooth transition in relations as Presidents Xi and Biden hold a final meeting on the sidelines of APEC in Peru. And hopes for a breakthrough on climate talks at the upcoming G20 summit in Brazil as discussions stall at COP29. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that Russia has unleashed a massive airstrike on the country's energy infrastructure. He says 120 missiles and 90 drones were launched overnight in a combined attack on all regions of the country, killing at least 7 people. Ukraine's energy grid bosses say significant damage has been caused as emergency blackouts are imposed. Let's go to our correspondent Megumi Lim in Kiev now. So Megumi, what more can you tell us about these strikes?
Well, officials here are saying that this was one of the largest missile attacks of the war, where regions all across Ukraine came under attack. The last mass missile attack took place about 2 months ago on August 26th, where over 200 drones and missiles were launched by Russia against Ukraine. But in this latest overnight attack, according to Ukraine's Air Force, the air defense systems shot down 104 out of 120 missiles and 42 out of 90 drones launched by Russia. And the Air Force said that Russia deployed over 40 fighter jets of various types carrying missiles, and also 4 naval missile carriers that took part in the launch of these projectiles. Now, the numbers alone tell you how large scale these attacks were. And I can tell you that it was also a very loud, sleepless night for many people here in the capital. We were woken up by air raid sirens and also multiple powerful, loud explosions that rang out across the city throughout the night as air defense systems worked to intercept these projectiles. And officials have said that the energy system of the country has been severely damaged. The energy minister said Moscow targeted the country's power generation and transmission facilities throughout Ukraine. Now, these attacks were expected. People have been expecting these attacks, as we have been experiencing regular drone attacks over the past couple of weeks. So there has been this sense of foreboding that a bigger attack was on its way. And it looks like as temperatures have dropped here, the winter season has settled in. Russia has begun its winter attacks on the country's energy grid. Already half of Ukraine's power generating capacity has been crippled by attacks that were carried out during the summer. And energy officials here are saying that we can expect blackouts of up to 20 hours a day if these attacks do continue. And so we are expecting a very difficult winter ahead here.
Megumi Lim in Kiev, many thanks for that. Let's get the view now from Russia and speak to our correspondent in Moscow, Dasha Chernyshova. Dasha, has the Kremlin made any comment yet about this attack?
Yes, indeed, we have the confirmation from the Russian Ministry of Defense saying that they have carried out the large-scale strike using high-precision, long-range weapons that targeted the military infrastructure of Ukraine. That has always been the Russian position, that what they target in Ukraine is the military infrastructure. So now they say they have targeted the infrastructure which is adjacent and necessary for the military airfields of Ukraine, also gas production facilities as well as the energy facilities of Ukraine that are involved into the military industrial sector of Ukraine. We also are hearing from the Russian Ministry of Defense the confirmation that they targeted the areas where the production of weapons has been arranged by the Ukrainian side, and they say all targets have been designated. On top of that, they say they have targeted the places of the deployment of the Ukrainian troops, and all in all, they say they have reached targets in 144 regions of Ukraine. But keep in mind that this airstrike comes at a time when there is a lot of expectation and uncertainty as well regarding the future of this conflict, because we have heard many hopes that there could be the change in the rhetoric, change in tone, or at least in the dynamics, after the US President-elect Donald Trump was saying that this conflict could be over in a day. And then there was the phone conversation between President Vladimir Putin and the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, although they have reiterated their basic positions and only said that they do continue their lines. It is obvious now that Russia is not going to have any sort of illusions when it comes to this political track, although saying it is not refusing the negotiations, but still saying that the military way is still needed to resolve this conflict and for Russia to actually achieve what it calls its special military operation and the goals that have been outlined almost 1,000 days ago.
OK, Dasha, thank you very much. That's Dasha Chernyshova, our Moscow correspondent. Lebanese authorities say Israel has intensified attacks across the country, reporting more than 145 strikes over the past day. That's despite reports of heightened US-mediated efforts to end the conflict. Lebanese sources say a strike on a densely populated district of Beirut killed Hezbollah's media relations chief, Mohammed Afif. There has been no comment from Hezbollah. Airstrikes have pummeled southern Beirut's Dahya neighbourhood, a Hezbollah stronghold that has been a focus of Israel's military campaign. Our correspondent Jonathan Regev reports now from Tel Aviv.
Negotiations parallel with heavy bombardments, are the two things connected? Probably yes. There is a feeling in Israel that the ceasefire may be coming soon. Not tomorrow, not the day after, but it might be happening in the next few weeks. And therefore, many Israeli officials, the Israeli army, believe that whatever will not be achieved now in the coming days, in the coming weeks, will not eventually be achieved because the war will be stopped with some kind of an agreement. That is why we're seeing intense bombardment of especially the Dahya neighborhood in Beirut, but not only the Dahya neighborhood. This high-ranking Hezbollah official today was killed in the Lebanese area, but in another neighborhood we're also seeing the ground offensive progressing in southern Lebanon. There is a feeling in Israel that some kind of an agreement will be reached soon, and therefore Israel has to move quickly to achieve as many of its goals as it can. There are also reports in Lebanon that Amos Hochstein, the American envoy, might be coming to the region, to Lebanon, in the coming days. Therefore, there is a parallel between these heavy bombardments and the negotiations for a ceasefire, as Israel believes that whatever will not be achieved now will not be achieved at all, and that is why it has to act fast.
Jonathan Regev reporting. Well, in Gaza, officials say at least 96 people have been killed in Israeli strikes in the north and central parts of the enclave. Our correspondent, Rami Al-Maghari, is in Khan Yunis.
The situation is getting tense over the last hours after Israel has seemingly, or the Israeli army has seemingly sent out a last ultimatum for the residents of the Beit Lahia town, the Mashru Beit Lahia, telling them to leave immediately by 2:30 p.m. That is actually the situation here is getting tense, and the access for the medical crews, the civil defense crews, is difficult, with the death toll is increasing over that area. Today, the day dawn, there was the largest strike in the past 40 days. 70 people have been reportedly killed, and other strikes hit the other two parts of the northern Gaza Strip. The Al-Auda hospital, which is the only operating, mainly operating in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, said that it is only running major operations, and it is running out of the fuel needed to generate electricity inside the hospital. The situation is critical these times, as I said, with an ultimatum seemingly by the Israeli army for the residents of Beit Lahia to leave immediately, as the Israeli army's actions continue unabated, with more houses being reportedly destroyed or detonated over there.
Rami Al-Maghari. This year's Air Show China has closed in the southern city of Zhuhai. The six-day event attracted close to 600,000 visitors, and $40 billion worth of deals were signed. Attendees enjoyed more than 70 aerobatic performances featuring 3 types of stealth fighter jets. It also marked the debut of China's J-35A fighter jet and the first appearance of Russia's Su-57 fighter jet in China. Finally, Hungary. Cold weather is setting in there, but tradition is also warming up. Every year, the Goosebumps Festival turns Budapest and villages across the country into a celebration of food and drink, as our correspondent Pablo Gutierrez reports.
There is an air of anticipation outside this winery in northern Hungary. Young and old have come here to watch Lady Gaga, not the singer, but the fastest goose in Hungary, defend her title. Every year in November, the Goosebumps Festival lights up Hungary, from Budapest to the vineyards of Etiek and Tokaj. This 17-day celebration fills towns with wine, food, and tradition. And this goose race is a festival highlight.
This year, as we celebrate our estate's 25th anniversary, we're proud to continue the goose races, a tradition we started 2 decades ago.
The races honor St. Martin's Day, a tradition that dates back centuries. This annual event marks the end of harvest, when communities prepare for winter and give thanks for the season's bounty.
It's a moment for people to pause, celebrate the season's bounty and start preparing for the winter and the holidays ahead.
A key part of this tradition is enjoying goose dishes paired with stewed cabbage and new wine. One of Budapest's most popular chefs shared with us his recipe for the perfect goose confit.
So Chef Balog tells me that the secret to making a delicious goose confit like this one, so you have this really nice crisp texture and the flavors, correct, is letting it cook at a very slow temperature for a long time, about 6 hours in its own fat.
5-6 hours, yeah.
5-6 hours in its own fat with a series of spices. So you need a lot of patience for that, and that is precisely what makes people come back each year.
Goose confit and new wine are the flavors of this season in Hungary.
Foie gras is my favorite dish, but I like also confit, the leg, the goose and the duck also. And it's really traditional with red cabbage and potato with onion and gravy sauce.
The Goosebumps Festival turns Hungary into a gastronomic paradise with wineries and restaurants offering special events for all visitors.
No, this is the taste of Hungary. This is of this season. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you, sir.
Back at the Goose Race, Lady Gaga dashed forward neck and neck with her feathered rivals, claiming another victory. Another year at the top. Pablo Gutierrez, CGTN, ETEC, Hungary.
And our headlines again. China and the United States call for a smooth transition in relations as Presidents Xi and Biden hold a final meeting on the sidelines of APEC in Peru. Hopes for a breakthrough on climate talks at the upcoming G20 summit in Brazil as discussions stall at COP29. And Israel ramps up its attacks on Lebanon. Officials say more than 145 strikes have hit the country over the past day. And that is The World Today. Thanks for watching. There's more on CGTN Europe's channel on the Telegram app, or you can scan the QR code on the screen to get stories and updates sent direct to your phone. There will be more news here at the top of the hour. Coming up next, it's Razor. For now, though, from all the team in London, goodbye.